Hello and welcome. My name is Emily Prieto, and I'm the co-founder of Seeds of DAO, alongside my husband, Joshua Prieto. If you're new to the podcast, this is a podcast for impact entrepreneurs creating regenerative enterprises. We often get asked what exactly a regenerative enterprise or impact entrepreneur is. So if you're wondering, a regenerative enterprise builds triple bottom line profits through the practice of ethics and principles that lead to a more inclusive, fair, and balanced economy. Impact entrepreneurs, or Regenpreneurs as we like to call them, are those willing and able to take on the financial and personal risks of starting and building regenerative enterprises. You'll get to know exactly what all that means as you join us for this and future episodes, but know that we welcome everyone to join us as we work to build regenerative economies together. That's exactly why we're doing what we do at Seeds of DAO. Our mission is to help establish regenerative economies in every bioregion by serving individual regenpreneurs like yourself. In this podcast, you'll hear the startup stories in all their glory from impact entrepreneurs all over the globe. You'll learn and grow the skills of building a regenerative enterprise from your peers, mentors, and leaders. Finally, we'll get to know each other as you engage in the podcast and join the wonderful regenerative business economies ecosystem, aka Regen B, an open community where peers, colleagues, funders, allies, and supporters of Regenpreneurs come together to build the regenerative economies of the future. Join us every month for a wonderful episode as we collectively move beyond sustainability and into our regenerative future. It all starts now.
Welcome to the Seeds of DAO Podcast. My name is Joshua Prieto, and I am here with two wonderful human beings doing some wonderful, great work in the world of co-living. And so I have Gareth and Daniel of Co-living DAO. We're going to dive into their story of how they started this co-living business that's helping people come together in their space, live together, and create a shared space. So with that, I usually like to get this started, Gareth, Daniel, with a little bit of what a day in the life of Gareth and Daniel. And the question that I'm going to ask you right now is, what got you up this morning? Like, how's your day going, essentially? And then I want to ask a part two of that, like, what gets you excited to do the work that you do? What gets you up in the morning to do the work, right? So first, just tell us a little bit about your day. Maybe Daniel, do you want to start? And then we'll go over to Gareth.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Josh, for the introduction, and great to be here. And the day, it's actually a very relevant day. It's a Wednesday, and on Wednesday, usually Gareth and I spend quite a lot of time together remotely, online, discussing the project and looking at more and more avenues and opportunities, basically looking for more ways to really provide value in this space. So the reason we're doing this, and I can speak for myself, I believe every day I wake up in the morning knowing that I'm going to be one day closer to realizing my vision. And I have this big vision of really facilitating a federation of co-living communities around the world where myself and pretty much everyone else who gets involved as well has the ability to have family no matter where they are in the world, have a space where they can feel home, have a space they can call home. And it's not just theoretical, have a space where they are really literally part owners. So basically redefining home ownership in a way, and knowing that there's family, there's community, and it's not something limited to one location. It's not something limited to something transactional. It's something that doesn't just feel real. It is real. So that's what gets me up in the morning every day. I'm very happy to share this journey with Gareth.
Yeah, awesome. And so, Gareth, what got you up this morning? How's your day going?
Hey, Josh, really good to see you again. My day's been great, yeah. I love Wednesdays because we really dive deep and we do a lot of work on a Wednesday together, myself and Dan. And it's very similar to what Dan said. What gets me up in the morning is building a better future in communities for other people, but also having them taste a bit of what I tasted when I lived in co-living. I thought it was just a profound life experience and it was a lot of fun. And we can dive into that because myself and Dan are co-founders because we were neighbors in a co-living community. And it was just there were so many special moments living in co-living, and creating Co-living DAO came out of those special moments. And so I want to give people a taste of that, what it feels like to live in community, and we want to make it even better for the future, and also build in environmental sustainability into everything that we do, because this is something that's really important for me, and that will be a big part of Co-living DAO communities in the future.
Yeah, wonderful. Well, and before we dive into the story, let's get a sense of the business that you're building and the concept, the business model, those types of things, so people can understand it. And then let's dive into the storytelling side. So, either Gareth, Daniel, take it away. Like, what's the business model? How does this Co-living DAO work?
Yeah, so we're effectively building a new paradigm for owning and living in a place. And with Co-living DAO, we like to say, own where you rent, and have a voice to shape your community. What we mean is, right now we have a very black and white idea of home ownership. That is, I either own a place outright and live there, and it's usually a single family unit, quite disconnected from the wider community, or people live on a rental basis, and therefore they don't own the space. And it's generally quite a transactional relationship with the landlord as well. What we're doing at Co-living DAO is we're designing a third way, what we believe is a better way, a much needed way, where people can get together, live in community, and at the same time all be part owners, therefore homeowners. So we're redefining home ownership, and we are bringing to the world a solution that combines the advantages of owning assets, of the advantages of renting, and therefore having the flexibility to move from one place to another, which is very much in line with new types of lifestyles that are more and more popular, and is catering not only for the digital nomads or millennials that are never going to own a place, but in reality for everyone who wants to live a life with more interconnectedness between people, and ultimately building stronger bonds with the people around.
Mm-hmm. So important. Like, I think it's in the States where I'm from, it's hard to own these days, right? It's also hard to feel like you're a part of a community, because if you're renting all the time, you might not be in that same place, by the time you renew your rent or your lease agreement. And that can make it really, really difficult. So I think this is super needed. Gareth, do you want to add anything to what Daniel said about your model and what you guys are building?
Yeah, as Dan said, own where you rent is a new property paradigm ownership model, but having a real voice to shape your community is a really powerful part of what we're building. So we're building it in a way that residents will be co-owners, or maybe a better word is stewards of the community. And what that means is that they have legal power to take part in the decision making, because they will be shareholders in the community that they live in. And that really changes the game, because when you're a resident with a shareholder in a co-living, that means you have, that legal power to make decisions. And the model that we're building enables people, and residents especially, to input their views and how they see the community being run and really shape it. All the way from the boring small stuff, like how often are we going to get cleaners to come in and clean the different units, to what kind of events do we want to run? What kind of events resonate with us as a community? What kind of community culture do we want to build? And so our model really helps the resident to have a real voice and to take part in everywhere from this really tiny baby decisions to the really big decisions that might involve, things like, where will the community be situated? How much is rent going to cost? How much ownership do we get? The big legal stuff, but more on, the fun stuff as well, making sure that we're in a place that we really enjoy living in and we can actually shape it together.
Yeah, wonderful. It sounds really awesome. I have been renting for a really long time. I've owned 2 places. I've been a bit of a real estate investor on the sense that I've, rented out a couple of the properties that I've had. And so I see that dynamic, and I also see just how much better that could be if the stakeholder, the person that's renting feels like it's their home as well, and they have ownership in it, they have stake in it. Sometimes you feel on the other side of that, when you are the owner and someone is renting your property, that they don't want to take care of it, that they don't really care, that they're just there for a short time and then they're moving on to somewhere else. And that I think it helps all stakeholders when we're looking at it this way. So let's dive into the story now, because I think it's a really juicy one, and it's kind of fun because you guys both live together. Tell us, how did you get started on this? How did this come to be, this business idea?
I can get started there. So we were neighbours in one of the UK's biggest co-livings, and actually one of the pioneer co-living communities in the UK in London. And we had a shared interest in entrepreneurship and innovation, and so we used to have a lot of chats about what would we do to make the community better? How would we make this co-living run better? And sometimes this was triggered by comedy moments from the co-living management team, where when things went wrong, they would, suggest a fix or try to help the residents. But occasionally they would do it in a very clumsy way. And to give you an example, new laundry facilities were installed, but the new machines, I think nearly all of them were broken as soon as they were installed. And we had an email from management saying there's a lot of demand for the one laundry machine. We suggest if you want to get line, to wake up at 3 a.m. and go and reserve your position in the line for the laundry machines. And this was, as well as being really inconvenient, obviously, but it was quite comical to myself and Dan, just to see how incompetent some of the management approaches were into solving these problems. So we used to have chats about how would we make co-living better, how would we make it better for residents and make it better for the co-living operators and the managers. It's not an us versus them mentality. For us, It's really a how do we work together and cooperate to make a better setup. And so one day we were watching a TV show about entrepreneurship. I think it was Undercover Billionaire. And we were both talking about how would we fix co-living. And I said, well, I would fix it because I'm looking at new organizational structures. And Dan said, that's interesting. I would look at it and fix it from a crypto or DeFi perspective, where it enables residents to have ownership through crypto mechanisms. And we realized that combining these two things together was a really powerful 360-degree solution. And we had an aha moment where we both looked at each other and we both realized the same thing, literally at the exact same moment. And that is where Co-living DAO was born. That was where the idea came from.
Cool. So you have this idea, and basically just spawned from the two of you living in that type of situation and realizing, well, what ways can we make this better? What's that spawned the idea? What led you guys to actually getting into business together? Because that's like almost a completely different thing when you have an idea and then all of a sudden you're going to start acting on that idea, and you're going to act on that idea as business partners. Tell me a little bit on that process and what led to that point. And for the entrepreneurs that are listening, they're probably going through these same things as well. So maybe share just a little bit of how that dynamic went, and some of the challenges that kind of come with starting a business in exactly from the very beginning with a partner as well. Maybe Daniel, do you want to take it from there?
Sure. It's an interesting question, Josh, because Gareth and I are both quite entrepreneurial, and therefore, whenever we imagine something, we have this tendency to think, okay, can we actually do something about that? Can we make this happen? And we know very well that there's a lot of things in the world that could be different, and maybe they would be better if they were different. There's only so much that we can do. And therefore, the choice of doing something about Co-living DAO is very intentional. It's a combination of, first of all, realizing that we have a lot of value to add to a cause like that, because we lived in co-living spaces for many years. We lived together, I think combined, it's about 6 years. Okay. And if, together 6 years, not combined. We combined over a decade of co-living experience as residents. So of which together actually 6 years in the same spaces. So we've seen everything from a resident perspective, and we've seen a lot of dynamics that can be changed. Some of them, it's not easy to change, but can be changed. Some of them are relatively easier in comparison. And we also have this business mindset where we can identify how to address certain challenges, because this is also very much in line with our personal values and principles, which are also to give more opportunities to people to create a fairer and more equitable society, as well as a more regenerative economy, a more sustainable way of doing business. We realize that this is not one of those ideas that we're going to let someone else pursue. And by the way, we welcome people also to pursue something like this, because it's great when there's more minds that think alike. But certainly we realize that we have what it takes to pursue this, and also we have the drive, the passion, the motivation to make something happen. And because we felt that it's something in full alignment, we decided to go for it.
Let's take a moment for a promo break and tell you about a free resource that Seeds of DAO has to help your regenerative brand break out of the noise. I feel regenerative enterprises and the brands they create for themselves are really setting the bar for what responsible business should look like today and in the future. But I have not always felt this way. In the past, I thought that regenerative brands all looked alike and had no lasting power to stand out in the markets they serve. Don't get me wrong, I've always hoped that the regenerative movement would turn into a bustling industry over time. But when I first got involved in permaculture, regeneration, and circular economics, regenerative enterprises had a long way to go. But what changed? Well, what changed is that the regenerative brands are getting smarter about how they identify themselves in the market. We can't all look like hippies on our way to Burning Man, but we also want to create authentic brands that can stand out against the extractive behemoths in the market. I am not suggesting you change the look of your brand into something that is not you. What I am suggesting is that you build an intentional brand identity that your ideal client can resonate with, while also setting you apart in the market. If you follow the promo link in the description or in the show notes, you will find a free resource to help you define your brand's unique archetypes. It's called the Regenpreneur Brand Archetype Quiz, and it's a free resource to help you build a brand that breaks out of the noise and into the hearts of your ideal clients. There's really nothing to lose and absolutely everything to gain. With that, let's get back to the episode.
How long has it been since that original moment of like, okay, we're going to do this together?
Just over 2 years, Josh.
Mm-hmm.
And so for the other entrepreneurs out there listening, what we actually did was we both had a chat and said, okay, let's explore this concept first. We both clearly care a lot about the cause, but let's explore the business concept or the business opportunity first and see what the response is from people in the space. So we made a very conscious decision to go and get some really early market validation, if you will, and go and speak to co-living operators, some of our peers who are co-living residents, just to pitch some of the early foundational concepts and see what resonated and see what didn't. And so we really tested the response to the concept in the beginning. And it was very positive and very strong. And some co-living operators even said to us, we've been looking for something like this, but we don't think it exists yet.
Cool. So that was the first step together, was going out and talking to others. Was it easy to find people? Were you living in co-living space. So did you test that space first and then move on to other co-living spaces? And you said that you lived in prior co-living spaces too. So did you build up a good community of people that you could reference and get that feedback from?
So what we did as a part of the validation process was primarily based on conversations to gauge what residents as well as co-living operators would feel about having a solution like this. So as a first stage of that validation, we realized that actually the vast majority of people we interviewed or we had a chat with, they were very positive about the idea because they agreed that it would address some of the challenges that are currently existing in the space, both from the operator's perspective and the resident perspective. And what we also did is then we had some deeper conversations with some prospective operators, and we had a number of operators that even made explicit shared explicit intentions of utilizing a solution like this by the time they actually go to market and have a community. And that's where we realized that we are able to provide value for a lot of community starters, so prospective operators of co-living spaces, be it urban or suburban or rural, and therefore we are now spending time designing the best possible ways to help community starters realize their vision.
Okay. So the community starters is really the main focus. It's not even necessarily the residents in the beginning, because you got to find those people that are willing to take on the risk of, okay, let's get the community together. Let's find the right place and the right structure to be able to start this. And that's kind of where you've started with the market research. What has been and I know this is for those that are listening, this is a part one of part two. And so we're going to explore some of that with myself and my own situation and how I might be able to do this in Bogota, in Colombia. But if you could share a little bit of some of the journey that they're going through that you found as you've been working with them, like, are they having trouble? What's their main pain point, and how are they getting involved in organizing these types of situations where they can potentially have a co-living situation where they're actually part owners and are they owners? What are some of the different situations that you've run into and encountered?
Yeah, it's a really good question, Josh. And in our conversations with community starters, often those people, we've come into contact with them because they are looking to create a better future world, right? A better future society. And you know, you and I met for that very reason in Portugal recently. And so a lot of these community starters are looking for not only a model to run a co-living community, but a model that will enable that better, fairer future society. And I'd go deeper than that. You know, this is quite a few of the people listening to the podcast are probably coming from the regenerative movement, where we're looking to go a bit more into, you know, this is not just about fairness. This is about how do we protect the environment and how do we ensure that there's good well-being for all people and a good division of wealth, and a net positive outcome, a different way of organizing businesses and society. So long story short, a lot of those community starters are looking for a blueprint that will enable them to build a community that can do that will take care of the environment, take care of the people in the community and all the stakeholders, including the operator and the investors, and also turn a financial profit so that you get a triple win. And, you know, we can go into a lot of the technical business details, but actually the start of the journey is the bit that we're really interested in now. And those are the conversations that we're having. So, for example, way before you even choose a location or a building, one of the things that you need to think about is the vision that you're going to have for your community and how you're going to build a community culture. How are you going to get those people together? What's your community going to look and feel like for people living in it? So getting that strategic vision pulled together for a co-living community is one of the first steps for those community starters. And then having a foundation that's going to enable them to get that triple win across people, planet, and profit, something that really works, and they don't need to go in and design all of the bits themselves, but they can maybe take a solution like the Co-living DAO blueprint and run with it. But that comes after you set the vision for setting up your community. So those are the very first conversations. And then figuring that out is super important. That's the first step.
Mm-hmm. So getting a vision and helping them to really understand how they're gathering these people for that vision is some of those first beginning steps. You mentioned the Co-living DAO process and the system that you're establishing. Can you walk us through how someone comes into your organization to build these types of co-living spaces? What's their journey going to be like? And is it still in the progress of like understanding of what that is, because you're still doing market research and that's essentially a part of it? Or do you have a sense of what that's going to be along their journey, or what parts are really clear and what parts aren't very clear? Maybe that's another way to go about it too.
Yeah, great question. And just exactly like you say, it is a very early stage process right now, but we certainly have identified some key steps in the journey, and we'll be happy to have this journey unfold as well. And the first thing, just like Gareth said, is really to make sure that the vision is developed, because we can talk about all the logistics and locations and the financials and all the practical aspects of co-living. But if there isn't a clear motivation and purpose to start the co-living in the first place, and also a clear vision on what it should be like, then the logistic aspects, they're not really as relevant, and then there isn't really any guidance on what logistic to choose and what practical elements to incorporate. So the number one aspect is really to dive a little bit deeper, understand why a certain individual or group wants to establish a co-living space, what it's going to be like. So what type of people is going to attract, possibly if there is a theme, or what type of community, what values and principles will this community share, will these members have in common. And from there, we reverse engineer everything and start thinking, okay, so based on these type of people that we want to attract to this community in order to live in this particular way, where is the best location? And then obviously, with a reality check, looking at what's available and what's feasible as well. But that's where the practicalities come in, only once we've established already the strategic vision. And then in terms of practicalities, of course, location, type of co-living, whether it's going to be urban, suburban, or rural, on which basis the people will live there. Is it going to be short-term or long-term, which is a spectrum, of course. It's not black and white. And then what type of shared activities the co-living members will enjoy, whether there is a community management that does most of the work, or if it's mostly member-led, resident-led, should we say. And from there, there's a number of other questions as well that we need an answer to. We look at amenities, what we need to really cater for the community. We look at pricing structure. We look at different business models and so on. So ideally, once we know why the operator wants to do that, the community starter wants to start that, then we look at who the stakeholders are and what's the best possible way in order to ensure a win, a financial win, also a win for all the people involved, and a win for the planet as well.
If I could just add to that, Josh, one of the things we're really interested in is making sure the community has a soul and a culture. And both Dan and I have experienced places where the financial model in the building is amazing, right? Really good facilities, a nice modern building, but that you can feel that there's no soul in some of those communities because they focused way too much on the business aspect and not enough on the human aspect. And equally, I mentioned some of the comedy moments where with the laundry facilities and the co-living that we lived in. Even when the building is falling apart, quote unquote, if the soul of the community is there, it's still a great place to live. And we really felt that connection to that particular co-living, that the soul of that community really shone through despite the problems. And so getting that right is so super important. And we're really open to learn from community starters by having conversations with them to understand what it is that they need to build the soul of their community and not just the way we see it, right? Really important for us to understand how they see the world.
Yeah, and something that came up just as you were talking there is both of you, Daniel, you mentioned stakeholders. I don't think this is a way that we typically look at the rental process. Is like these people all have a stake in this. And I've recently moved to a new place. We're a month into living in Bogota. It's the biggest city we've ever lived in. But as we were trying to find that place, it was really, really difficult. There was that kind of soulless feeling when we would go into an apartment complex, and you'd see all the things that you would want to see. You got the gym, you got little. One of the places had, you could tell they were trying. They had like a little gaming center for the kids, or a hangout center for young teens, preteens, and teens. And I was like, okay, that's cool, but I didn't see any teens in there. It's still, it didn't look like it had been lived in a little bit, and like that, maybe there's a scuff on the wall from the kids playing around or whatever, those types of things, right? And yes, it was a newer space, but at the same time, it was old enough that I felt like that I should see kids running around. I should see, as I'm walking around, it felt, I did see kids when I first got into this one complex that I was thinking we were about to actually go for this place. And I couldn't get in with that, right? I couldn't see myself living there because it felt a little soulless. Everything was there, like it was perfect. Everything was supposed to be what I wanted for this space, but I couldn't find that. The other one that we eventually chose, I think we chose it more so because of that stakeholder feeling of I felt like we were doing something together. The owner of the space, it was actually our Airbnb, and when we first got to this space, we Airbnb'd for 2 weeks, and so it was interesting to see this dynamic. And I think it helps us to move into the part 2 of this. When those that are listening, we're going to dive into the conversation on how we can set up this co-living DAO space, maybe for this Colombia area and specifically Usaquén area of the city, and see if there's a potential for this. But one of the things that I noticed with this space was as soon as I got into the Airbnb, the person that owns this space talked to us and was like, oh, he walked us around the block and said, here's this space. If you need to go get somewhere easy and quick to eat that's affordable, go to this place. If you need, he basically walked us around the block the very first time, and he spent that moment with us. And that I felt like I was almost a stakeholder in that position. It was probably the reason why we're like, wow, maybe we asked him, is this place just for rent? Is it for sale? What's your situation on this place? And we started talking about, possibly purchasing this. It's a little hard to purchase at being an expat here. You have to establish your credit here and all that stuff. And I guess it's even hard for people that live here to get loans and home loans. And so we didn't know, but this person that we had just barely met was kind enough to even start helping us to walk through that process. So you mentioned stakeholders, and I think I want to end here with the question, or help us to transition towards the question of how you guys are helping people get into co-living situations and build these communities. what would you hope from the story that you've just started, the journey that you've begun with Co-living DAO? What would you hope other entrepreneurs, and maybe it's the entrepreneur that's going to take on this kind of special space and take on the risk of building this special space, what would you hope they would get from your journey, your story, as you're beginning it and as you're living it right now?
That's a great question. And by the way, just to reflect on what you said about the spaces not really showing many signs of life, Gareth and I have experienced that. We even lived in places where we had these beautiful facilities, look great in the pictures, but then no one was using them. And it was almost surreal, because one thing is you see them once when you're shown the place, and one thing is to live there and see that over and over again, how these spaces either are not really very functional, so maybe they look great for marketing, but they're not practically very functional, or maybe they are functional, but because there is no soul and no real community of people, then no one is really using them. So it's very common in co-living spaces and other types of service accommodation and HMOs in general. And this is something that obviously it feels like a big waste. So yeah, definitely one of the big things that we're doing here, we see everyone as people that are cooperating, and we want to move away from this sort of adversarial relationship between tenants and landlords, where someone's benefit comes at the detriment of the other party. It doesn't have to be that way, and it's not designed to be that way with Co-living DAO. It's exactly the opposite. We know that everyone could be better off. We're building a non-zero sum solution where ultimately all the people involved, the stakeholders, which by the way is not just residents and operators, but it also involves potential investors, partners, even the wider local community. Everyone can effectively be better off as a result. And something to tell other regen entrepreneurs or people that are thinking about starting something, what I'd love to say is, first of all, you will never know what it was going to be like if you don't start. And so if you haven't started yet, that's definitely there's no better time than just starting, and everything else is something that can be figured out along the way. But also what I realized is that, yes, it will be challenging. There will be hurdles and pitfalls and setbacks. So it's not really about how good an idea is, because even the best idea is probably going to have to be refined. And most successful businesses started with a different idea and they had to pivot that idea multiple times. So how good your idea is doesn't really matter at this point. We are prepared to make some changes as long as we stay true to the ethos and the principles and the values. We're happy to change some of the practical elements. And just like a lot of other businesses, it's absolutely fine to change the idea. Well, it cannot be changed if it's not set in the beginning is the attitude. Of course, the attitude can be changed, but that's really the part that matters. So having a strong passion and staying connected to that passion and the reason why one starts a business in the first place or starts a venture in the first place, that is what's going to help entrepreneurs really get past all those hurdles and challenges. So staying connected with the purpose and the original reason why, that is the thing that's going to make the difference in the long run.
Yeah, beautiful. Well said. There's so many times in entrepreneurship where we lose sight of that as we're going through the big challenges. And I really enjoyed where you started off there. Like the challenges usually, or the business model and the idea that you have is going to change and evolve, and it's going to change as you really get a better understanding of what this truly is. But the purpose usually doesn't change, right? That usually helps you to stay consistent and move through those difficult times. Yeah, great. Thanks for sharing, Daniel. Gareth, do you want to add your part to what you hope the entrepreneurs that are listening to this and potential people that are building co-living situations, what you would hope they would take away?
Yeah, it really struck me, Josh, that the human touch your Airbnb host demonstrated when he took you on the tour and showed you around, and how that unlocked, other potential opportunities, like you buying the place, for example. And that human touch is so important in what we're doing. We're going to use a lot of sophisticated technology at Co-living DAO, but we have to make sure that the human touch is a major part of it. So we're designing the technology to be a tool to enable human connection, and rather than the other way around, right? Which is the way that tech is being used quite more often these days. And that human touch relates to my piece of advice for regenerative entrepreneurs, because we know that entrepreneurship is already challenging, very difficult. And now regenerative entrepreneurship is building a new system as well, a better system for the future. So there's a double challenge there. And one of the things that I noticed that really makes a difference, it sounds so cliched, right? But, make sure you're connected to people that share the same kind of vision for system change. Get into regenerative gatherings, get into entrepreneurial gatherings of all types for sure. But really important you connect with other regenerative entrepreneurs, because we're facing a double challenge. We want to change the system and we want to build cool new startup businesses. And being in Portugal and meeting you and the other people in our camp was so important for me, because I just feeling those connections was much more important than, the intellectual chats or the business building technical pieces or what technologies are we going to use. Feeling that connection made a huge difference to my motivation. I came back doubly motivated. So even if you find like 1, 2, 3 people, connect with them on a regular basis if you want to keep motivated and stay on the journey.
Perfect. Yeah, I really felt that too as we were in Portugal. For those that do know, we did go to Gathering of Tribes, and that's what we're talking about here. We had a camp that we shared together, Gareth and I, and we got to know each other really well. And that connection is so valuable that I think we underestimate the power of like getting together these days, especially after, or maybe we even value it a little bit more when we're in those situations. But I think it's easier for us to fall in those situations where we can do it all online. We can do it all over Zoom, right? So I think it's important that we do get in spaces where we get to connect with other entrepreneurs that share that vision of regeneration, right? It's one thing to share, entrepreneurial dreams together. It's another when we're working on something that is moving us towards a better future for people, planet, and the future. So yeah, it's been lovely to hear the journey that you're on and the work that you're doing. Both Daniel, Gareth, thank you for taking the time with us. This is just part 1, so you guys get to grill me and help me through my journey in finding and potentially creating a co-living space here together. With others in this area. So let's dive into that. If you're interested in getting the part 2, head over to Gareth and Daniel's Co-living DAO Podcast. Tell me the name and help us to get directed over there so we can listen to part 2.
Yeah, thanks everyone for listening. Great to be here. And we're looking forward to part 2. So definitely head over colivingdao.com, or you can find the podcast on your favorite podcast platform as Co-living DAO Insights. So make sure you head over there for part 2.
Awesome. We'll see you guys there.
Thanks for joining us today. We hope you enjoyed the podcast, and it really is a blessing and a pleasure to bring each episode to you. So what'd you think? If you enjoy the podcast, please leave us a review or follow us on the podcast platform of your choice. Each review really does help us further the reach of this podcast and move our mission forward to build regenerative economies in every bioregion. If you have a suggestion or feedback for us, please let us know in the open and free Regenerative Business Economies ecosystem, known as RegenB, which is linked in the description and in the show notes of this episode. RegenB also has an awesome community request form that allows you to suggest guests. Register to be a guest on the podcast and share your own Regenpreneur startup story or any other suggestion you might have for the community. Without your feedback and requests, this podcast and community wouldn't be what it is, so please let us know. Now, this may be bye for now, but remember, it doesn't end here. It has only just begun. The regenerative economies of the future start now with you.